financial institutions can use CERTA to collect the TCFD data from their general partners as well as the corresponding underlying assets. So, for example, in this workflow, the financial institution would come over and fill out the basic stuffs like the fund name, the asset class, the managing GP, the number of underlying holdings which are being managed by the GP, the fund currency, date of record, investment, and few other fields. And then once these details have been filled out, then the financial institution can then go ahead and invite a point of contact from the GP side who would come over and provide their self-disclosure. So for example, you can add a user here, enter the email ID, the first name and the last name, and the user would receive an email invite to log in to this process and complete the details. So now once a user has been invited on the GP side, the invited individual can then log in via the mail and then create a self-disclosure for TCFD. So the GP point of contact can simply click on add and this would create a record. So for example, the GP can then fill out the basic stuffs like the disclosure year, the scope on emissions, the approach to calculate scope on emissions, scope 2 emissions, total emissions, and a bunch of other fields pertaining to metrics and targets. And then moving on, the GP can then fill out the governance related questions. So if there's an ESG committee, a person in charge or a team in charge of climate risk. So all of these things can be easily selected from the standard drop-down options. And then we have strategy. So again, the GP can fill out appropriately if his or her company has climate risk report or not, and accordingly, if there is, then they can import a file as well. And then there are other fields, so something around what's the time horizon, what's the financial impact, status of financial impact. And then lastly, you have the risk management section. So again, there are a couple of fields here specifically pertaining to the risk aspect of the operation. So the invited GP can again fill out these questions and select the appropriate risk level for these questions. And once done, hit submit and then go back. So the GP has provided the TCFD disclosure at its level, but now the GP is also managing a certain number of underlying holdings. So for that, what the GP can do is now go to the underlying holdings step and create a record for each of the underlying holdings it's being managed. So for example, I've just taken one here. So let's say the GP is managing iCertis. So now the GP has two options. So the GP, if he or she has the relevant data, can fill out the asset details himself, herself, or they can again invite a point of contact from the underlying assets side who would again receive a mail invite and can log in and complete their own TCFD self-disclosure. And then moving on, the asset details have to be filled out like the name, the year, the region, the country, and then there are more granular fields like what's the sector, what's the industry group, industry and all, and other financial metrics like the enterprise value, EVIC, last 12 months revenue, EBITDA, debt and all. And once these basic fields have been filled out, then we again have the TCFD disclosure. So the asset point of contact or the GP can then fill out the scope on emissions, the way the scope on emissions have been calculated, similarly for scope 2, scope 3, and yeah, there are a few other fields. And then in the governance, there are like these 5 fields around if there's a board member with responsibility and is there an ESG committee or not. So again, you simply choose from the drop down. And then we have strategy. Again, there are these questions which can be selected easily from the standard drop downs. And lastly, we have the risk management. All the details have to be filled out, and once done, you can actually see so once done, the financial institution can actually see the GP disclosure as well as the underlying assets disclosure. And then the data provided in these forms can be rolled up to create visualizations like pie chart, bar chart, heat map, and all.